This podcast is brought to you by the Handshake Agency Network.
Thank you so much for joining me today on the Green Room podcast. I'm secretly a little bit stoked. I'm not so secretly a huge Rise Against fan, but it's also so exciting to be on the brink of Nowhere Generation, aka your 9th studio album. So double excitement today.
Awesome. That's great. Awesome. We're excited too. I can't believe it's been 9 records.
Yeah. And I guess it's obviously not new territory for the band whatsoever, but given the insanity that's kind of come through in 2020, how is it feeling in Rise Against World right now? Are you able to be enjoying this process compared to previous times? Does it feel like it's relief, or is it just get it out of our lives, get it into the world? What's it feeling?
I mean, a little bit of both. I think especially when the pandemic first happened, and we all had to kind of just put everything on hold. I realized it was probably a good thing for Rise Against. We were probably long overdue for putting everything on hold. And so it was a good, forced way to just kind of take a minute and breathe. But yeah, then after a while, and especially as it dragged on, these songs, this record that we were sitting on, we just wanted to share it with the world. It took everything in us to kind of hold it back, because we weren't sure if it was going to get the miles that it deserved, if we just put it out in the middle of everything. And so it feels so good to finally be releasing these sort of these secrets that we've been holding on to. We can talk about it, we can share it, and just get it out there and move on to the next chapter of Rise Against.
Yeah. Well, what's kind of awesome about this, I guess, I read you guys talk back in 2019. I believe you were kind of mentioning that you were going to try to take a more laid back, relaxed approach to how you were writing. And inevitably what would come after that is probably a forced, not relaxation, but generally everyone had to kind of pump the brakes a little bit and reset a little bit. Did you guys feel like this influenced you positively in this respect, from how you're planning to write anyway? Did you actually enjoy this more relaxed approach to it, despite all the insanity that was going on in 2020?
Yeah, I did. I think it's I'm always trying to find the perfect balance between not feeling pressured or stressed to create, but I'm also aware that I sort of need that looming deadline, at the same time to create at least a little bit of pressure. And so I'm always trying to balance that. I'm usually screwing it up, I'm usually not finding the balance. It's one or the other, or the pendulum is too far in one way. But I feel like this record was good in that way because we were able to take the time writing. A lot of the writing actually took place even before the pandemic. And then we were able to take our time recording it. And then that's when the pandemic really set in. So we spent a lot of time just with the little bells and whistles, mixing, mastering, the artwork, all the concepts behind it. Basically the look that you see when you see anything to do with Rise Against and this era of Rise Against. I think we were able to really think that stuff through. And that was nice because usually that's a little bit more rushed and things don't always happen the way you want them to happen. And so I feel good that there's a good comprehensive look and feel to this era of Rise Against.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, did you guys get to do any of the finishing touches in person, face to face, or was everything kind of done remotely by necessity?
It was all remote by necessity because in addition to there being a lockdown, only 2 of us even live in the same part of the country, so we're spread out all over the States. And so, we weren't getting on planes or doing any of that. So it really luckily we were able to do it all remote. The only thing we got together for was the music video, which I think was last August. It was sort of like a window of time where I feel like things were starting to come back before they didn't come back, at least here in the States. And so we were able to, in that window of time, we were able to get out to LA, see each other, take a lot of photos, do a video, talk about the record, do all those things. And then shortly after that window kind of closed. And so I was we were glad that, you know, we were able to squeeze it into all of that. And then since then, that may have been the last time we've even like seen each other. So it's like, yeah, it's been, I see Joe, our bass player, because he lives here in Chicago with me. But yeah, other than that, we haven't really been, even seen each other.
Wow. What makes that music video all the more special? It's like a reunion for the fans and the band. So that's fantastic. But like, who would have known that would have been that short window? But
Right.
Yeah. And with the whole COVID thing too, I believe you've been doing a few other things. Is it correct that you've gone back to school to study? Did you just decide to like level up while everyone else is baking bread and watching Tiger King and doing all that at home?
I still watch Tiger King. But yeah, like I feel like I look at life as like input and output, you know, like especially as a creative person, like my output is the songs, the music, you know, playing shows, that kind of thing. But you can't always be doing output. You got to be doing some input at some point. And input can be like, you know, reading a book, seeing a movie, you know, going to a museum, like listening to music, going to a show, whatever it is in your life that your input is. And having just finished the record, I was so exhausted, like just kind of like emotionally exhausted, you know, from all of that. I was sort of done talking and I wanted to start listening, you know, and that's when I decided I'd always wanted to go back to school to pick up my degree where I left off when the band kidnapped me 20 years ago. And it turned into a perfect time to do it. You know, everything was kind of online and I just basically just decided to sign up on a whim. I sort of played chicken with the first day of school. I signed up and I was like, you know, I can pull out if I decide not to do this, but I'll just sign up now. And that first day came and I was like, all right, I'm jumping in. The next thing you know, I was on like Zoom calls with like, you know, other students and learning all this stuff. And it turned out to be a great thing for me because it kept me so busy that I didn't even realize that anything else was happening. I was so just focused on it and I wanted to do a good job and I wanted to learn all this stuff. And it was the perfect thing for me just to kind of switch to input and just kind of be learning and writing papers and then also getting feedback, you know, from like a professor who doesn't really care who you are, you know, they're just like, you either did a good job or you did a bad job, you know?
Totally. It's an interesting change of pace. And I guess as well for someone like yourself, it sounds like it was a long time coming. I love that you were kidnapped by the band, but you managed to escape, get a day release to go study, which is fantastic.
Right.
And as a band, I mean, it's no secret, you guys continually prove to be amazing advocates for a variety of causes and issues. And Nowhere Generation definitely tackles the smoke and mirrors behind the whole American dream ideology. And I guess it's an ideology or a concept that has kind of heightened and come to the forefront, especially again in 2020. But was this underlying narrative always kind of something you were gunning for thematically when the album was coming to life?
You know, I never have a good grand plan when I'm like tackling a record. I just start writing it. And then later on, when I take a step back from all the songs, all of like the motifs, you know, I mean, all the things that kind of tie the songs together, they start to pop out. And that's when I realized like, oh, I've been writing about this. I didn't realize I was writing about this, but this theme keeps popping up in all these songs, kind of tying these songs together. And that's when I realized like Nowhere Generation was like the anchor for all the songs. And I felt like it was something that wasn't being talked about a lot. And I wanted to like sing about it and talk about it. Was what a lot of young people are going through in a world that has normalized the idea that you can work full time and still be poor, you know, that young people who are running the same race their parents did, but like the finish line just keeps moving on them, you know, and their reactions to it are in a lot of ways being ridiculed, you know, like millennial has become a punchline, you know, and I felt like it was kind of like not a fair shake that people were getting, and that I wanted to lend a more sympathetic ear to the plight of what a lot of fans in the Rise Against community are going through, you know, and that's kind of where Nowhere Generation came from. And then the more I thought about it and like wrote about it, I realized like, it's not even just younger people. It's like people my age, you know, like people older than me, like anybody who's trying to compete in a world of, you know, ever increasing disparity and concentrated wealth and the rise of the 1%, all these things. Like anybody who's doing that, they're feeling that. They're feeling that weight and those fears and anxieties of what tomorrow is going to look like. And so I wanted to write a record that touched on that, as opposed to writing a record that was like going at a lot of the easy targets of being an American political punk rock band during a Trump administration. You know, like that was, there was a lot of low hanging fruit, you know, that we could have grabbed at, and a lot of easy songs to write. But like, I felt like there was something happening underneath the surface that was more important than who the president was. It was more important than, you know, a lot of these distractions. I wanted to sing about some of the roots and why people feel the way they feel.
It's interesting too that you say that, because I guess the thing that's really fascinating about Rise Against is not just that you can tackle some of these really hard-hitting issues and write these killer riffs and do all of this. Like there's always this level of, I don't know, underlying optimism or some hope that kind of permeates through it. And I guess like you're touching on these really hectic things, and like people are struggling and they feel bad that they're struggling, and it's this vicious cycle. But I do love that it's not always doom and gloom with you guys. You always manage to strike this balance between reality, optimism. It's forceful and meaningful. So it's a rare feat for a lot of people. So I feel like it's a really fitting time for a lot of us to have an album like this in our lives.
That's great. You know, you always want to put water where the fire is, you know, and I feel like, you know, there is hope laced into Rise Against songs because we actually do feel that there is hope, you know, and so it exists. And like, I want a Rise Against song to like take you with me to a dark place, but I'm not going to abandon you there. You know, I want to show you it. But then I want to leave like a trail of breadcrumbs to get out and realize like, hey, like this is the how dark the world could get if we keep going down this road. Now let's go back and figure out a way to avoid this.
Yeah, which I've got goosebumps a little bit, I'm not going to lie, not just because it's cold today. I guess slightly on that topic too, I read a story recently that I adored, that you were standing in a coffee shop behind a man who would go on to become a lawyer inspired by your music and, you know, advocate actively for all this stuff you guys have been singing about. I mean, it's not just that you guys have that intent, like it's being picked up on the other side, and like you're shaping professions and careers, and, you know, the onflow of that is just phenomenal. I adored reading that story.
Yeah, it really happened like that too. And we were in Chicago, we were at rehearsals, getting ready for a tour, which can be a really like tedious process and like trying and stressful. And like you're trying to get all these different technical things to work. You know what I mean? And so when you're in the middle of all of that, you're so far removed from the heart of the band and the heart of the song. And you're more talking about, you know, microphones and guitars and like whatever. And like, it's just like, it's tedious, you know? And I remember we took a break and I went to get coffee by myself. And I got in line, and I was in line behind this guy, and there was a Rise Against tattoo on the back of his calf. So I could see it, you know, he was wearing shorts. And he turned around, recognized me, we started talking. And that's when he told me, you know, what you just said. And he said that, because when I asked him what he was doing here, he said he wasn't from Chicago and that he came here because he's now a civil rights lawyer and he's fighting police brutality in Chicago, which, you know, here in Chicago, it's a big problem. And I was just like blown away, like immediately, because there was two things happening to me in that moment. Like one, this guy was taking me out of like the tediousness of the rehearsals and reminding me there's something so much more important than just like making sure every single instrument is perfect and that the show is exactly what it should be. That there's like, we're trafficking in something way more important, like the heart of the song and trying to get it to reach people. And so that was like a huge thing to kind of like break me out of like that spell of like a stressful rehearsal. And then just like the cycle of like the song, the fact that like this thing that we created out of thin air, and just found this person, doesn't even live in my city. And not only did he choose to do something with his life that was really like progressive and positive, but he chose to do it like in the place that I live. Like he was actively making the city I live in a better place, and it just all those things like, they were all kind of hit me as I was kind of walking away, like, wow, that's really cool. And like, it's sort of like, it sent me back into that rehearsal with like a renewed faith, like, okay, this is important what we're doing here.
And what are the odds, like that exact moment that this person wore shorts that day, stood in front of you? Like it's right. Just, it clearly was meant to happen. Like, yeah, right. Mind blowing. That's incredible. And another amazing thing for you guys too. I mean, now that the album is coming very, very soon and going to erupt into the world, you guys have also been able to announce a headline tour in the US as well, which touring art looks so foreign to me. Every time I see tour art, I'm like, oh, tour art, oh, live shows. Like, how does it feel to also be perched on this next adventure as we get into the second half of the year?
Man, in some ways, like playing shows feels like it was a lifetime ago, and we haven't been able to do it in a long time. And so like, it's crazy. It feels great, obviously, to like, we're chomping at the bit to like get back into doing it, and then part of me is like realizing like, oh, wow, like what was it even like doing that? Like I have a really bizarre job. I have a really weird occupation. I jump around on a stage for 90 minutes, in different cities around the world and play songs that I wrote like in this room, And so it's a really strange thing. And it's even stranger the further away from it you get, like when you're in the moment, it's almost turns into like very routine. It's like hop on the bus, wake up in the morning, go to catering, do a sound check, do some press, go play a show. It's like this bizarre thing becomes very normal, and then the further you away from it you are, the more you think, well, it is kind of a crazy thing that we do, right? And so I look forward to getting back into it because I think that's the only thing that's going to make it normal again, is actually just to step foot on that stage, play those shows, connect with those people, and just do it, and jump in head first. And we did announce a tour. We'll be playing the States, which I think is all we're really allowed to play right now. And as soon as we're allowed to play anywhere else, we will. The States will be they're all outdoor shows, which makes it easier than doing an indoor show because I don't know what indoor shows are going to look like yet. And then some festivals in the fall. And then, hopefully we get to Australia because I know you guys are partying down there. So we would like to get over there.
Yeah, well, I think we'd be extremely excited. I think I was looking at all the shows and I'm like, if they're in America and I'm in Australia, if I start swimming now, I might make it there in time for the show, and maybe I'll just be able to sneak in and just be like, hey, I'm just wearing my wetsuit. No big deal at Rise Against.
I think it'll work. It's a good plan.
Excellent. Thank you appreciate the support. I guess too, like having all of this ahead and looking into live shows, temporarily, I would love to jump back in time briefly. Like, I'm not going to imply or insinuate anything about age here, but obviously you've been doing this for a fair while now. Can you take me back to your first ever Rise Against live show that you played? Where was it? How was it? And was there a particularly memorable moment? Or if you blocked it out of your memory?
Oh, it's so blurry. It's so blurry back then. It's funny because I just found like these old notebooks, and some of them are like old journals, and they're really just kind of like almost diary style, just like talking about being on the road. And it's so funny because I'm reading them as like a different person. I don't even remember some of the stuff, I do remember the very first show we played. It was pretty uneventful. But it was in a basement of a house somewhere in the northern suburbs of Chicago. And the northern suburbs of Chicago is like where they film Home Alone, Uncle Buck, Ferris Bueller, like Breakfast Club, all those John Hughes movies. So like you can picture the neighborhood, right? And it was in a basement, And there was some expectation behind us because our bass player, Joe, had played in a band called 88 Fingers Louie, and they were a popular punk band in Chicago, and they'd broken up. So there was a little bit of expectation that we would be good because people liked 88, you know? And so I think we were maybe even headlining the show possibly. And then we played, you know, for like maybe like 30, 40 people. And it was pretty uneventful. Though I figured out later, I didn't know it at the time, that I was talking to Patrick from Fall Out Boy, and he had a band called Patterson before Fall Out Boy, and they played that show also.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I know Patrick now, but I didn't know him then, you know? And so it's really funny that like he was there in that basement. We were there in that basement. That was our first show. And like that was his band before Fall Out Boy. So kind of a weird small world.
I feel like you seem to have a knack for being in the right place at the right time. This seems to be an establishing theme that I'm feeling throughout this. Whether you know it at the time or not, but
Right.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You're not too shabby for a first memory.
Right.
And I guess hopefully there'll be a lot more stories to come with the next upcoming tours. But to close us out today, one thing I would love to ask you as well, as someone who, as I mentioned, has been kicking around doing this, like sharing your amazing gifts and love of music with all of us, what is it that you love the most about what you do that keeps driving you and keeps you coming back for more?
I mean, it's really the audience. It's like the people listen to us. It's amazing to have this thing that we created a long time ago, have it still connect with people. And so you have your fans that have been around, you know, since day one, that the band holds a special place in their heart and their life, which is really cool. And I have those bands too. And then you have, like, this year, we're going to bring brand new fans into the family. You know, we're going to bring a 16-year-old kid who's been listening to pop music their whole life, you know, and they're going to join the Rise Against family. Like, that's going to happen, you know, and that's been happening for 20 years. And it's so cool to like watch this thing kind of snowball. And then it's crazy to create songs that connect with people that weren't even born when this band started, you know, like I don't know. It's kind of amazing. It's like I think it's like our link to like the world too, you know, just to kind of be able to connect with people and find that some of these themes that we talk about are a little timeless, you know, like people encounter them. There's somebody encountering them every year, you know? And so in that way, I think of Rise Against like we're like the professor at a university, you know? And so we're there all the time, but that freshman incoming class is constantly changing, you know? And when they come in, you know, you got to teach them the same thing sometimes, you know what I mean? So it's like, sometimes you don't need to be teaching a brand new thing. Sometimes it's like this person right now needs to hear this. And maybe you've already heard it, but this front row has not heard it. So we're going to say it again.
It's incredible. And it's like what you were saying, I mean, with this person, you know, you're inspiring people all over, you're inspiring people to choose careers. Like, you never know these ongoing repercussions. So it's amazing that the love you feel for your fans is given back, you know, equally. And it's an incredible thing to know how this is going to continue to evolve and continue to inspire and hopefully change the world for the better a bit more. So
Absolutely.
It's incredible. Yeah. But for now, I think it's just so exciting that we are being gifted this incredible album. Nowhere Generation is another absolute killer Rise Against album. There was no doubt it would be, you know, anything but I'm so excited to know that you guys will hopefully come to Australia as well. I may see you at a gig in my wetsuit in America. Otherwise, it'd be incredible to have you here when we can have you here. And thank you so much for having a chat with me today. It's been an absolute treat.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. And thank you to all of our Australian fans. Like, you guys are the best, and we miss you, and we can't wait to get back as soon as possible.
Yay. Thank you so much, Tim.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Green Room with Tiana Speter is a podcast from the Handshake Agency Network, produced by Tiana Speter and Andrew Mast, with Pharrell D'Souza and Henry Gibson providing research. Recorded and engineered by Zig Parker, executive producer Craig Treweek.